When you're selling something like a shirt or a cell phone, nice photography can make all the difference. The same idea applies to showing off your character models. In this video, we will learn to make a simple setup so you can make a bunch of nice, attractive renderings. And the setups are all saved so you can go back and make revisions because, well, who doesn't like doing revisions? If that's interesting to you, do please hit that like button, and away we go. Here we have a brand new Blender file, and this will be our example character for this tutorial, but any rigged character will do fine. Okay, let's get started. Let's go to our render settings here and set this to cycles. Turn on GPU if you have a decent GPU. For the viewport settings, this is fine. If you set this higher, like 0.1, it'll be pretty quick to update. For the renderers, I think 512 is okay. 0.01, that's okay. Make sure you've got denoise turned on. Okay, let's name these collections here. This is our character. Let's make a new collection by right-clicking and hitting new collection and type in scene. And let's start making our scene. We'll add a backdrop first. Shift A to add, mesh, and plane. Tab to go to edit mode. A to select all. S and then type 3 to scale it times 3. Hit G and Y to move it in Y. Type in 1.5 to move it back a bit. Then hit 2 to go to edge mode and click, control click, control click. E to extrude, Z to move that in Z and type in 4. Let's go to modifiers and add a sub D like that. Let's add a couple here. Go back into edit mode with tab. Go to face mode with 3. A to select all. Face, shade smooth. Here we go. And then let's go to edge mode again. Hit Control R and hover around the front here and then scroll the mouse wheel up to add a couple of cuts. Enter to drop it. SX to pull that out a bit. Same thing here, Control R. Let's add just one cut. Enter GZ to pull that down a bit. Then hit Alt Z to go to X-ray. Go to edge mode with 1. Grab that and GY -2. Click, and I think that's a nice backdrop. Let's add some color to this backdrop. So let's make sure we have it selected. Go to this materials panel here. Click new. We'll call this backdrop. And let's make it some kind of color. So some thoughts on color. So if you pick a contrasting color to what you want your focus to be, then it'll make it pop more. And that's what I want to do here. So her skin is kind of, orange. So the opposite of orange would be blue, I think. Let's see here. This is kind of skin kind of area like that. So the opposite would be this kind of a teal color. So it should theoretically make her pop more. And then let's make this a lot darker. And I think that works pretty good. Let's also turn up the roughness like that. And let's drop the saturation so it just looks, the specular, so it looks darker. Well, I know I said to contrast it, but just play with it and see what you like. But in general, if you kind of contrast to what your focal is, then this should pop more. I like this better. And I want to desaturate it. So you can roll the saturation back a bit like that. Let's make it a bit darker. Okay, let's add an environment. So let's go to our shading workspace here. And let's get rid of this window. And let's make this window here, our shader editor, and then go to World. Okay, so I'm going to show you something I'm not going to use, but it's super useful, so I'm going to show it anyway. So Shift A, S, C, O, O, R, D for texture coordinates. Shift A, S, M, A, P, P for mapping. And Shift A, S, E, N, V, environment texture. So generated into vector, vector to vector, color to color. And so what we're going to do is attach a HDRI environment to this here. So this way you can, instead of using these default ones, you can go to world and use your own. Pink means there's nothing here right now, so let's go and add that. I like to get my HDRIs from polyhaven.com. This is not a paid advertisement, but this is a great website. It's free, and you can click on HDRIs here, and you can find some HDRIs you can use. I'm going to pick, I like these studio ones. It kind of feels like it works good for studio photography. And I'll grab this one here and just click download. I have already downloaded this. I won't do it again, but they're on Patreon, so definitely support them if you are able to. Back in Blender, click on open. I've already saved this to this folder, so just click that here and click open. And we have our HDRI set up here. You can kind of see it's all in the background. And so all this lighting here for this environment will affect the model. So if you rotate the environment, you can see it will affect the lighting. So you can see it changes how it looks. So this is actually really nice. It can get you some pretty decent renders right off the bat. But we're going to go with a little more custom control. So we're going to turn that off. But this is very useful. I use it a lot. So I wanted to show you that. Okay. Let's go back to our modeling workspace here. And let's exit edit mode. And now let's add in some lights. So let's make sure we are in our scene here, our scene collection. Shift A, we're going to add a controller for our lights. So let's go and pick these arrows. So we're going to use this to easily move all of our lights together. Let's call this light pivot. Okay, and let's Shift A again, go to lights, Shift A, light, here we go, and area. Area lights are nice because they make a nice kind of soft light for our character. And let's world and scene lights. This way we can see this is a closer rendition of what the lights will look like. GZ to move that up. And then RX, oops. Okay, so let's rotate this light around the 3D cursor. So the 3D cursor, basically if you hold shift and right click, this little circle moves around. And then if you set the transform mode to 3D cursor, let's go here, transform to 3D cursor. When you rotate something, it rotates around that 3D cursor. So it's kind of weird at first, but it becomes very useful when you get used to it. So let's put this back into the origin. Shift A and 1. Oops. Shift S and 1. Shift S brings up the controls for moving the 3D cursor. Things related to that. So Shift S and 1. And then grab that. RX. Say 45. And then let's click the light, control click the light pivot that we just made, control P and object. So now when we click the light pivot and rotate in Z, you can see it moves the light. And it's more useful when you have more than one light. So let's go and create some basic lights. Shift D, R, put that one roughly here. Shift D, R, and put that one roughly there. So now when we grab our light pivot and RZ, you can see it moves them all together. And just, this is kind of a nice quick way to move things. Okay, so that's good. Let's also add our camera. Okay, we're going to add another empty. Shift A. Let's add a different looking one. We'll make it like plane axes, so it looks a little bit different. We'll call this camera pivot. Okay, now let's Shift A and add our camera. I want to zero this camera out, so let's just do this. Go here, type in 0, 0, 0. This way we know we start off nice and square. Let's rotate this on the X and hit 90. Let's move this by local. This is the frame of reference, or the orientation for how objects are moved. If you hit this to global, it moves things in X and Y and Z based on this here. If you do by local, it moves it by the objects, whatever object you have, its inherent X, Y, and Z. So it's a little confusing, but once you get used to that, also it becomes very intuitive. So I'm going to move this in this object's own Z-axis, GZ. You can see it goes back. Versus if you go in global and hit GZ, it moves it up and down. So a little weird, I know. So let's just move that to there for now. And then let's click the camera, Control click camera pivot, Control P, and object. Let's also add another empty. This is going to be where the camera focuses on. So Shift A, empty, and let's make it a cone. Something that just stands out. Let's scale this down a bit. Call this camera focus. I like to do this because it's a nice visual way to set the camera, like where the camera is focusing on, because I like to use lots of depth of field. Let's grab our camera here, go to camera settings here, and click on depth of field. Pick this here and pick camera focus. That'll control the depth of field for the camera. So it's not where the camera looks at, it's where the camera focuses at. I hope that makes sense. I'll show you in a second. But this is our basic setup. So now let's go and tweak things to get everything the way we want it to be. So let's do a couple things here. Let's make a separate window, N to hide that, T to hide that, T to hide that. Let's also drag up from here and create a timeline window. And let's drag that across so we have a bigger timeline. So this is how you do animations. This is the simple version. There's lots of depth for animation, but this is just the basics. So if you click this here, this goes into recording mode. So right now, if you slide this, nothing moves. This is what frame you're on. So right now we're at frame 0. If you go here, it's kind of like moving. It's like hitting the play button. It goes forward and nothing's moving. If you grab an object and hit I and go to location, rotation, scale, it sets a keyframe for that object. So now this keyframe tells Blender to put this camera in this location, and in this rotation for frame 0. So if we go to frame 30 and hit G and move this and rotate it, it'll tell Blender to put the camera in this location of rotation at frame 30. So now if you go back here and go through the timeline, you can see this is how it controls animation. Okay, so let's go and delete that. Great. So you can grab this keyframe here and hit X, and you can delete the keyframe. Okay. So what we're going to do here, and when you leave this on, whenever you move the object on a different, actually wherever you are, whenever you move it with this record turned on, it'll set a keyframe. So it's a nice easy way to like automatically set keyframes. So let's go back to 0, and with the camera selected, we're going to, if you click this here, you can see what the camera sees like that. And so anything outside, you don't see it. Anything inside this box, you do see it. Let's hit N to make that go away. And so let's just basically get this into a generic setup so we can tune our lights in our camera. So let's click this here. This is the camera pivot. Let's transform by global and hit GZ. And you can see as we move the camera pivot, it also moves the camera because it's grouped. And in the right window here, this camera view, you can see that it's changing what we're looking at. So let's just put this focus at her face. We'll tweak this more later. Let's put this into a shaded view so we can see a little bit better. Okay. And let's hit Insert to toggle all this overlays. Same as clicking this here. So you can kind of see a little bit better. I forgot one more light. Sorry. So this light will not be attached to the background, to the light pivot. It's just going to be floating in the background. So let's Shift right click on our background. So we just create a little pivot there, transform pivot there. Shift A, and let's do a light and an area light. You can see it over here too. That's R and X to pull it back. And then go to GY, GX, and let's rotate. Let's rotate this around bounding box center, which is the center of the object you're holding. And 30. So this just so we can see what's going on in the background. Background light. Let's look at the camera controls a bit. So if we click our camera pivot, I like to use this part for all the pivot functions. So RZ, it goes left and right, or RX, it goes up and down. I like to have this on local. So that way it's always moving in relation to the camera's own axes. And then for zooming in and out, I like to use the actual camera. So hit GZ, goes in and out. And then GY to come down a bit. For rendering faces, I find it's useful to set this really high. So I go to like 300. I find this is nice because it doesn't distort the facial features as much. And this is another photography thing. Okay, it's pretty good. Let's adjust our focus, camera focus. Let's go to our side view here. Go to X-ray again. Whoops, must have moved. Put that right there. Let's pull the camera back a bit. You can actually click, if you have overlays on, you can click this here. And since you're moving around local, you can hit GZ even in this window, and you can pull the camera back. So that's pretty good here. Let's do some of our light setup. Okay, back to our camera again here. Let's grab our camera and let's zoom in so we can see a bit better. As I said, I like to use lots of depth of field, so let's go and set this to like what. So these are f-stop and blades and rotation. All this is camera lingo, so I don't know it exactly, but I know if you lower this, it makes it blurrier, so it's more blurry. Probably too blurry, but let's do that so we can see how this focus works. So remember our little cone here? So that's our focus. And if we go to the side view, okay, this is another thing that's another trick here. So I want to go to the side view and I want to move the camera focus. You could go Shift Z and in X-ray mode so you can see it this way, but then everything is invisible and I don't like that. So what you can do to get rid of this background, select it, Control I, and then hit slash to go to isolate mode. So it's still there in this window, but you don't see it in this left window. So now let's go and grab our camera focus. Let's go in side view by hitting X. And then you can see, let's zoom in here. And let's hit insert to get rid of that overlay. So now you can see, let's get closer. So now you can see as we move this around, this little orange dot, that's the middle of this cone. So as we move this around, you can see we're adjusting where it's focusing on. This is obviously too much depth of field. So now let's adjust this to something more reasonable, like, yeah, maybe that's good. Another thing we're going to do is we're going to group the focus to her face somewhere. So let's grab the rig for our character, go to edit mode with Control Tab. Let's grab a bone to click onto. So this is the head bone. You can see it moves the head. Go here and copy this name, Control C. Control Tab again to get out of there. Grab our camera focus. Go to here. Get a child of constraint. Click this eyedropper and click our rig somewhere. Okay, and then Control V and paste in that head bone. And it might move, this focus might move way out there. Just click set inverse. I have no idea why it does that, but it does. And so now let's see if this works. So let's go back into our front view. You should see the hair back here is blurry, but her eyes are in focus. Now if you grab your character, go into pose mode, grab our pelvis, and move her closer or further, you can see it stays in focus to where her eyes are. And then you can tweak it once you get your pose and your camera angle set up. Let's get our lights set up. Let's actually hide this again. Control I, slash. Let's go to our render preview mode so we can see the actual lighting. Then let's hide these two lights. You can grab them, go to the outliner, hit number pad period, and you can see them and you can hide them like that. Okay, so let's mess with this main light here. So we'll grab that. Let's rotate it. Okay, I want to rotate this around the light pivot. So let's grab a light pivot. Let's actually move this around our point of interest. And then hit Shift S and 2. So you snap the 3D cursor to the light pivot. And then grab this guy, transform around 3D cursor. We have this set to local. And then our X, you can pull this down a bit. Then go to top view and rotate this to the side a bit. So you have just a little bit of shadow for her nose. I think that's pretty good. And then we can balance this out a bit with kind of a fill light. So we'll hit Shift D and rotate that like there. Let's make this a weaker light. Make this one a stronger light. And let's make this light slightly warmer. I think warm light, it kind of makes it look nicer, I think. It's kind of cool because you'll get a little bit of highlight with these area lights. But it looks funny with it even, so let's pull this one down a bit. So RX and pull it down. We're in local mode, so we're local and transforming around the 3D cursor. So let's do it like that a bit. Okay. Uplighting is really hard to make things look good. So if you pull the light below the face, it starts to go up below her chin, and it's really you can do it, but it's just hard to make it look good. So I like to keep it above the eyes. Let's make this 20. Okay, so that's kind of a nice even lighting. Let's call this key. Let's call this one fill. Okay, so that's pretty good. And let's work with our halo lights. So we'll call this the rim light. So this light here, this is going to basically light the back of the head or back of the hair. We'll get some of the shoulder. So let's make this cool. We're making this cool to, so we have warm lights in the foreground and cool in the background. It'll create a sense of depth. And this you can blow out really bright. So let's try 150. Okay. Too cool. Okay, that's pretty good. And so what you're trying to do with this light here is you're trying to just create a halo of light. So right here, how it's getting just the outer edge of this shape lit, that's kind of nice. But we're focusing more on the head here, so let's try and get this look here on the hair. So let's rotate that back a bit. No, over here a bit. Let's hit RX to pull it down a bit. Okay, that's a little bit better. And pull it out a bit. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I think it might be even a little bit too bright. Okay, that's good. Then let's work with our last light here. So this is kind of a rim light also. So let's see here. We'll call this rim cool. And this will be rim neutral. Okay, so let's make this like 50, so it's weaker than the other one. Let's get this creating some form on the very edges. I think that's pretty good. And then another thing I like to do, especially with shiny hair, I like to bring out some of the highlights. So this is another thing you can try. Hit Shift D to duplicate that. Let's call this rim neutral highlight. Make the size like 0.001, so it's super small. and make the power like 100. And so what this will do is this will create, it'll just create some shininess on these lights. And you can control it too. So you have your rim light here, your neutral rim light, to kind of create that bit of core. This highlight, you can create a bit of glossiness. So you can see you can move it around a bit and get it to be where you want. Maybe 75. I'm just trying to find a spot where it kind of accentuates those curves in her hair. Don't go so far where it hits the front of the face, because this is a very harsh light, and so it'll create strong shadows, and you don't want that. For face photography, it's kind of nice to have very soft lighting. So let's pull that back there, and maybe go like here. So now we've got some nice definition for the perimeter and light for the front. I think the front light is not even, it's not strong enough, so let's make this like 30. $40 and like 15. Okay, so I think that's no, maybe like 10. The shadow here is too even, so it looks funny. You want the shadow to be more biased to one side. Let's put it back to 7. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is our basic setup for our camera and for our lighting. I mentioned that we're going to save all of our setups, and so let's talk about that a bit. So the way we do that is with animation. So if you grab everything here, let's save our default location for everything. So grab everything, hit I, location, rotation, and scale. And let's grab our character also. Let's grab her rig. She actually has 2 rigs, one for her hair and one for her body. Go to pose mode with Control Tab, hit I, I, location, rotation, and scale. So she is saved in this A frame position, and all the lights are saved in this location. So we can always go back to this frame and grab it again to reset everything. So let's go to, say, frame 5. Let's do our first shot. I'm going to guess that your goal for creating renderings of your character are to either sell the greatness of your character or to sell the greatness of your ability to create a great character. One challenge with this is that when people are reviewing all these renderings or submissions or designs, there's not a lot of attention span to look at these things, or they might be seeing like hundreds of these things. So it's really important to show as few images as possible, but to have each one be as impactful as possible. And what I've found worked well is to do a portrait shot of the character's face and to do a full body shot. I've also found that it's valuable to use facial expression or an interesting body position to generate either excitement or to make the rendering speak to the viewer, so it becomes that much more powerful. So let's go and do that. So let's go to frame 5 here, and let's set a pose. And we can make this in this preview mode so it's faster. So this is like you just pose your character how you like it. So you can go and, set your pose however you want, so it's kind of interesting. I like to use hands for expression a lot. Okay, so it's something like that. Okay, I think that pose is pretty good. Good enough, at least for the tutorial. Then we can tweak our lights. So go to your scene and grab the light pivot. So you can kind of just rotate this and see if anything helps it. Ooh, too harsh. Or you can rotate them individually. Let's see, grab our light pivot, Shift S and 2 to bring the 3D cursor to the middle of the pivot, and then grab the lights. So it's the neutral here. Let's transform around 3D cursor and rotate a bit. Like that. Let's transform around local and hit GZ to pull it back a bit so it's not as harsh. And let's mess with that little highlight light. Okay, I think that's pretty good. And then you can go to your renderer, get your settings. This is set to 0.01, 512 is okay. You can set your resolution. So 1920 by 1080 is pretty standard. You can do it higher if you want to crop in. I'll set this to 100%, so it just renders 1:1. Just click render, which is F12. I usually render at 200%, so there's extra pixels to work with, but for the demo, let's just do this pretty quickly. Okay, so that's our first rendering. It's could be better. You can see the depth of field effect where the hair is blurry and the eyes are sharp. It kind of adds a nice sophisticated portrait photography look, and the facial expression and the hand gesture and the body pose, it just makes it more interesting or appealing to people. So I think it's I find it very valuable to do stuff like this. So let's go and do another rendering. Okay, so let's do our second rendering. Let's make sure we're have everything saved again. And I can't see the camera here. If you can't see the camera, it's either overlays is turned off. You can see here you can toggle, I think extras is for lights and cameras and things, or it might be turned off here, which it is turned off there. So if you can turn it on here, you can see it reappears. And so there's no keyframe for this camera. So let's grab it, everything, I, location, rotation, scale. Okay, so now we know there's a keyframe on this, so we can always go back to it. Okay, frame 10. So this will be our full body shot. And let's go and grab the camera, transform around local, GZ to pull way out, and GY. The camera's turned off here too. There we go. GY, GZ. And then let's grab our camera pivot and our X and GY. Okay, so one way to do it is to do a standing full body shot where you can see the whole character. Do an interesting pose, and that works pretty good. Personally, I find that when you're way zoomed out like this, you just can't see a lot of the character, and so I like to get closer on the character. It's a little more dramatic to me. And so to do that, what I like to do is I like to make the character sitting or something. So let's go and do that. So let's shift right click here, Shift A, let's just add a cube. I would usually have a chair or something, but we'll just use a cube. So bring the cube in here, Shift click the background, Control L to copy the materials and link materials. Again, it's probably better to like put something logical there, but instead of just a cube, let's just use a cube. Okay, so we've got a cube there, and let's make her sitting. Grab this. Okay, this background's getting in the way again. Control I and slash to isolate. Then let's go and make her sit. Sitting's always, it's actually kind of difficult. Oops, let's go to pose mode here. Sitting's actually difficult. Characters aren't usually rigged to sit nicely. Usually they just run around, but you can fake it by using angles or points of view to hide where it looks funny. Okay, let's pose her head. Let's set the camera. See what we're looking at here first. GZ. So you can see it's just, I find it more interesting to see the character sitting. You can get the character bigger on the screen. I mean, usually I would get even closer. I'd probably do something like that and just skip the shoes. But I know a lot of times people want to show the whole body, so let's do something like that. A little static looking at the front like that. Let's rotate the camera a bit. Camera pivot. I think it's nicer like that. And I think her feet are clipping. So let's keep working on the pose and let's make her face have a nice expression. Have happy eyes. Yeah, she's kind of squinting. Oh, look, she's so happy. Nice. And let's tweak the lights a bit. So let's exit pose mode, go to our light pivot and top view and rotate it a bit. Let's see if we can quickly get a nice light. Ugh. Okay, that's kind of good. I think the rim neutral, let's adjust that a little bit. It's kind of hard to see what's going on, but this is the camera. And it's rotating around itself. We don't want that. We want to rotate around the pivot. So let's grab our light pivot again, hit Shift S and 2 to move our 3D cursor. Then go and grab our light again and transform around 3D cursor. Okay. Let's get closer with this. Not too much. Let's grab that highlight. See where it looks good. Okay, this cube is really boring, and it's throwing the balance for the whole composition off. So let's just mess with it a little bit here. Let's go to point mode, just so it's a little more centered. You could do off an asymmetric layout. A lot of times I'll do an asymmetric layout so we can put copy on one side and the image on the other, but let's just do this. Before we render it, I do want to show you that if you have something selected that has keyframes, so for example, this does not have keyframes here, so let's hit A, I, location, rotation, scale. Okay, so now this light that we have selected has keyframes for frame 10, 5, and 0. If you hit up and down arrow, it'll jump between the keyframes. So what you can do is, if you want to go back and change that first rendering, you can just jump to this frame here, and you can go back and edit this image. So it's a nice way to like kind of bookmark your renderings and save it all in one file. But let's go and render this and see how it looks. Okay, render number 2. Okay, here's render number 2. You can't see the full body, or you can't see the standard A-frame pose, but I think it has more visual interest and more connection to people. So I do think that doing things this way is more valuable. Hopefully this was helpful to you. Leave a comment to let me know what you thought, or like or subscribe, or better yet, support me on Patreon. And I hope to see you in the next tutorial. Thanks.